You all know the run show, then I'm going to Senator Wyden.
We're going to make this a filibuster-free zone.
Exactly. Here we go. In fact, you can yank me off at any point. You can just say enough. So good morning, everyone. My name is Ann Udall. I'm the CEO and president of Planned Parenthood Columbia Willamette. And I want to welcome officially Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, and Congressman Earl Blumenauer. We are so blessed and lucky and humbled in Oregon to have such strong champions of sexual and reproductive rights in Congress. And I want to thank you, all of you, on behalf of the staff, the board, and supporters for your ongoing, never waning support for the work we do at PPCW. And throughout the pandemic, as even evidenced today when you came in, our remarkable staff has been working hard to keep our clinics open. We have never shut since the day the pandemic started, and we know that people's sexual and reproductive health care is essential health care. Some politicians, not the ones that I'm in company with, have been working for decades to make accessing abortion as difficult as possible. This includes forcing people to travel long distances, wait unnecessary days between appointments, pay out of the pocket without insurance coverage, and the list of barriers go on. And we know very clearly that these bans disproportionately impact people of color or people with lower incomes. And if that isn't bad enough, here comes Texas with SB 8, Senate Bill SB 8, which goes even further. It offers bounties. It targets medical professionals, and it turns neighbors against neighbors. And we have 6 states already lined up right now with copycat bills. This month, Planned Parenthood Federation of America and an organization called the National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda, they released a red letter report. I'd like to share just a few data points. What this report shows is that 36 million women of reproductive age, that is half of the women in the United States, will lose abortion access if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. And that number increases when you include trans men, gender nonconforming, and non-binary people of reproductive age in the United States. This is real, and the impact is huge. Here in Oregon, we are one of 14 states who have laws in place that protect access to abortion for all people. What a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade would mean for us is it would immediately impact Oregonians as well as the neighboring state of Idaho. A study shows that an abortion ban in Idaho, which will happen immediately when the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, will immediately trigger an abortion ban in Idaho. And what this means is that women in Oregon who go across the border into Idaho will lose abortion access, up to 35% decrease. So if we think we're safe and we think things are just fine in Oregon, we need to understand we're part of a movement and we're part of a path that is looking pretty scary. So this is a time to turn our anger, our dismay, our disbelief into action to demand that abortion continues to be accessible for all people. This is happening. And I was in Bend last weekend. I was with hundreds of Oregonians who were marching to say clearly and loudly, we will not go back. There were hundreds, thousands of marches around the country on Saturday with the same message. So I want to thank you again, Senators Wyden and Merkley, Congresspeople Bonamici and Blumenauer, for joining us today. Our federal, I tell you all this often, but our federal delegation, it's the envy of most of my CEO colleagues. They are like so jealous of this group here. They're a little bit in awe of all of you. So I'll get to introduce you, Senator Wyden, and my dad used to say when he would introduce people, this man needs no introduction, and therefore I will not give him one. But I would like to just say very quickly, I'm amazed. You've been proudly serving all of us since 1996, and you have always fought for the issues that improve our lives, privacy. You've been a huge champion about privacy protection, climate change, fairer tax code, and of course, better health care. So welcome, welcome. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Ann.
You're very welcome.
We're not going to make this a full-fledged bouquet tossing contest, but we so appreciate all that you do here at Planned Parenthood. And as I was driving over, I so wish we were here celebrating, for example, all of the other services that you offer that are so important to women and families. The phenomenal work that's done here in terms of preventive health care, all the cancers, for example, that you prevent. So, as we said, we're not going to give long speeches today. Here's why we all wanted to come together. And as soon as we heard we had this opportunity, we reached out. The whole delegation wanted to be here with you and share your concerns because, the fact is, with extremists attacking reproductive rights from Texas to Washington, D.C., we just wanted you to know that your congressional delegation will not be on the sidelines and will not be silenced in the face of this enormous effort to roll back reproductive rights for women. And we're all in, we're all about this fight, and we're going to stay at it until there is a right to legal and safe abortion everywhere in America, period, full stop. So, just a couple of other quick points. The fight is real because the Supreme Court, in darkness, went out and basically gave the green light to Texas, which started to mobilize communities across the country to try and turn back the clock. Now, the congressional delegation that is with you is ideally positioned in order to lead the fight with other states. If you go through our committee assignments, and we're not going to put you all to sleep by going through every committee we serve on, but the Senate Finance Committee, which I chair, has jurisdiction over Medicaid, which is hugely important to the health care rights of the most vulnerable, women in America. Senator Merkley is on the Appropriations Committee, doing phenomenal work on natural resources, for example. But what is little known is Senator Merkley's committee has enormous sway over public health funding in so many parts of the federal government. And that's the case with the Congresswoman, my colleague, who's my compatriot on the sister committee in the House. We're all ideally positioned to be able to do this work. And I'm just going to close by emphasizing the point that Ann wrapped up with. A lot of people are going to say when they hear about this program, whew, no sweat in Oregon, because we took steps with respect to the Oregon Health Plan and the like. Once you basically let this genie out of the bottle and the extremists get sway in Texas or Mississippi or wherever it is, it's a new day. You have a juggernaut that in effect is trying to roll back the rights of women, turn back the clock, and the four of us are here to say, no way. Not going to be happening on our watch. We're not going to be silent and go to the sidelines and accept this. My colleague, my compatriot in the battles, Senator Merkley, welcome.
Well, thank you all for being here today in support of women's reproductive rights. And I'd like to invite all our Planned Parenthood staff members to stand up for a minute just so we can say thank you for doing this.
Bravo!
There's only one person that should be making decisions about a woman's reproductive health, and that's the women themselves. And they should do so if they should like in consultation with their partner and their spiritual or religious advisor. But the government has no place stepping in between a woman and her doctor to make these decisions, and we need to get them out of the exam room here in America. So for a long time, since Roe v. Wade, we've depended on the courts across America to defend this constitutional right. But that day has ended. What we have seen over the past 3 decades is a deliberate strategy of the court being polarized towards a cultural divide, towards a divide that wants to take away the right of women to make these decisions. And now here we are at that point that I think many of us never thought we'd get that far, that a case is before the court right now, the Dobbs case, the case coming out of Mississippi, and the court may well make a decision to roll back Roe v. Wade or to take a big bite out of it. And that means we have to think very seriously and organize very boldly and aggressively to defend women's rights. And I want to make 2 core points on this. The first is that we have to defend the ballot box all across America from the tremendous corruption that's happened in 19 states with some 30-plus laws over the last 2 months to try to keep targeted groups of Americans from voting. We have to defend the ballot box for every single American in defense of women's reproductive rights. And that means passing the For the People Act, which is now the Freedom to Vote Act in the Senate. It is so important. It takes on the gerrymandering that affects the House of Representatives, where my colleagues serve. There is an effort by my Republican colleagues to produce what they call gerrymandering on steroids, which instead of the bias that exists now in favor of the party of the powerful and the party that wants to strip reproductive rights, they want to go to put this and basically double the attack on equal representation. Let's stand up for equal representation and make sure the House of Representatives is not gerrymandered. And that same bill will have all those provisions to take on those 19 states and 30-plus laws that are trying to block the ballot box. And it builds on the good work done here in Oregon in terms of things like vote by mail. And I know Ron has been a champion nationally for vote by mail and paper ballots and integrity in the Senate. And I'm a full partner with him on all of those provisions, which all are incorporated into the Freedom to Vote Act. So the second point I really wanted to drive home is that the Senate controls the courts. And therefore, in that sense, I'm saying in terms of the nomination confirmation process, it is so important that we have a robust majority in the Senate which can proceed to actually act on the issues facing America, to pass the Women's Health Protection Act. And we need to do it now. So this act prohibits bans on abortion prior to viability, basically codifying Roe v. Wade. It requires doctors to provide medically accurate information to women seeking abortion. It limits restrictions on access to medication abortion in early pregnancy. And it prohibits the state-mandated procedures or protocols such as mandatory ultrasounds or waiting periods prior to receiving care. It defends the reproductive rights of women across America. Now, how are we going to get this passed in the Senate? We have 47 sponsors. We need 50 and a vice president. We need a few more. But we also have to fix the filibuster so there cannot be a minority veto by Mitch McConnell and his colleagues as there is on every policy issue today. That has to end. And when it needs to end so we can pass the Voting Rights Act, so we can pass the Women's Health Protection Act, so that we can respond to all of the big issues facing America. But Ron and I are fully committed in this fight to save the Senate so the Senate can partner with the House and my colleagues to save America and save our rights. And we will stay in this fight. And it's now my pleasure to Oh, you're next. Oh, okay.
I'm
Suzanne, why don't
supposed
you-
to introduce Earl.
is
but
next.
okay, too. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. So honored to be here with you. Thank you to my colleagues, but Anne and Planned Parenthood and all the Planned Parenthood advocates. Thank you to all of you for what you do each and every day. There are few decisions more personal and private than the decision about whether and when to bear a child. The right to abortion is under attack in this country right now. And it's fundamentally about whether people, especially women, have autonomy over their own bodies and their own futures and have the freedom to make their own decisions. This is about freedom to make people's decisions themselves. And I want to say that it's important to recognize that banning abortion and limiting abortion does not make it go away. I was in high school before Roe versus Wade. Some of you here were as well, and some of you were not. So I want to talk about
all of us were in high school.
But I want to talk about what it was like to be a girl in high school before Roe versus Wade. Girls who got pregnant, and there were girls who got pregnant, and they were terrified because abortion was not legal. They hit their stomachs. They took dangerous pills they were told would end their pregnancy. This was the day of back alley abortions and self-help, and what they resorted to in their desperation was often life-threatening. We absolutely must protect the right to safe, legal abortion. This is a right that the Supreme Court found based in privacy in Roe versus Wade, which coincidentally came out of the state of, you guessed it, Texas. So this ban in Texas right now is especially appalling. It sets up this vigilante system where people can make money by going after anyone who helps anyone access an abortion. It's outrageous, and it disproportionately, as we know, affects low-income, young, Black, Latinx people. Those with means will be able to find an abortion, and that's been true throughout history. Before Roe versus Wade, people could travel to another country. If they had a lot of money, they might be able to find a doctor to perform an abortion in the U.S. But now people in Texas are traveling to neighboring states. But we know what's at risk. We know what's at risk, as Anne and others have said. I'm proud to be from Oregon, very proud to be from Oregon, where we recognize that restrictions can cause harm, and that pregnant people can and should be able to make their own decisions. Well, now recently you heard Senator Merkley talk about the Women's Health Protection Act, which Earl and I were proud to vote for and help pass in the House. You heard from the senator what that act does, enshrining the Roe versus Wade into law, but also banning all these restrictions across the country. We're calling on the Senate to pass it, but we understand the challenges with that. So we cannot rest. We cannot rest. We had a brief reprieve for maybe a couple of days when a district court struck down the harmful law in Texas. But that, as we know, late yesterday, that was overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now we are bracing ourselves for what might happen on December 1st when the Supreme Court hears the Mississippi case. We are bracing ourselves, but we are also up for the fight, and we will refuse. We are refusing. We are standing up and saying, we will not be dragged back to those dangerous days before Roe versus Wade. We will not let that happen. We will stand with you every step of the way, every day today and every day, and I will always fight to protect abortion rights and expand access to reproductive care. Thank you, everyone, for all you do. We're in the fight together, and we won't back down. So now it is my honor to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Congressman Earl Blumenauer.
Thank you, Suzanne. Well said. Anne's father, the legendary Mo Udall, being in a situation like I'm in, would say, you know, fortunately for you, everything that needs to be said has already been said. Unfortunately, not everybody has said it. but I'll try and be gentle here. I just want to make 3 points. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, where the struggle for abortion was brutal. Ann Barnett, I mean, the news media, the challenges that were faced, it was not a pretty situation. We are the only state that has no restrictions on women's reproductive freedom because of those efforts dating back to the 50s and Planned Parenthood's leadership. And we've come together, I mean, I don't know how many rallies and protests, demonstrations, fundraisers. It's been part of an ongoing process to get us where we are. But this is really at risk with a new era of insidious infringement on people's rights. And make no mistake, it puts reproductive freedom in the crosshairs everywhere. But know that using this vigilante, bounty hunting, it's indescribable in terms of crafting it to have no real governmental accountability. If this is sustained, there's any number of areas that these extreme Republican legislators can interfere with the lives of people across the country. I don't think we've ever seen a threat like this put in the hands of people who are weaponizing things to take away our freedom, assault the environment, and it's not just reproductive health, but this is in the spotlight now. And I'm pleased that reproductive health is in the spotlight now. I think they have triggered something that is going to have profound, far-reaching consequences. It spotlights the effort that Jeff and Ron, in terms of trying to deal with a filibuster, how this affects people's lives. It is, I think, an opportunity for us to align Americans' values with their actions. We know that the majority of Americans agree with us in terms of these principles of reproductive freedom. But sadly, not always the people who agree with this are as motivated as the minority extremists on the other side. I think that is changing. The amazing stories that are coming out now about the hardship on young women, people of color, poor people, dealing with the circumstances that have been inflicted upon them by the Texas legislature. Every day in the media, new stories that tug at anybody's heartstrings. I do think this is an opportunity for us to be able to help align those values with action. It's not a problem of Planned Parenthood. You've been on the front line forever. But being able to engage a broader coalition because of what is at stake. I am pleased to be here today with my resolute colleagues, a joy to serve with, and with Planned Parenthood that has made such a difference in our community now and will continue to do so in the future. Thank you very much.
Why don't we do this? We'll stick around if anybody has questions individually, but do any of the press folks have questions?